come on in if anyone's there at 2 in the morning. This will be a late one and a short one tonight. If there's any viewers in Europe, hello. Hello, European audience. Probably the only people awake. All right, we're going to get it started real quick here. I spent like forever making this stupid video, which I'll play at the end of this show. It's actually decent, but been trying to add in monologues to the mix. So it's just taking a little bit longer to add all this stuff. Anyways, here we go. Live from a studio apartment, this is Misinformation. All right, well, tonight, Trump called Somalians garbage. Yeah. Said the Kill Tony guy, really? Fucking really? Now it's cool, now it's fine. Fucking great. Awesome. Yeah, of course, it's no surprise that Trump called Somalians garbage. In between his stints as president, he had a quick stint as a garbage man. I don't know if anyone recalls. It was actually right after he quit McDonald's. He used to taking out the trash. His Ilhan Omar is big mad about the whole thing. She was calling Trump a crazy old white man earlier. Yeah, she says he's just the type of inbred white guy to marry his own. Never mind. Nothing to see. Forget about it. I shouldn't have said anything. There's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is under fire for an alleged double tap on a Venezuelan drug boat. And Matt Gaetz chimed in. He said, "That's why I prefer to hit it and quit it. Just always one and done for me." It's good to have a frat guy on your council when you're going to war. They come in clutch sometimes. So tired right now. Anyways, what do we got tonight? So, some quick stories. I mean, all that seems to be in the news is Somalia. It kind of came out of nowhere, I feel like. Like, we weren't talking about it, and then everybody, all of the news topics, Trump's calling Somalians garbage, and they need to get out of the country, and everyone's talking about it. There's fraud, like this huge fraud case in Minnesota with Somalians. So I keep hearing about it. So I decided to kind of do a little bit of investigation today and see like what exactly these fraud charges are all about. So I got a little bit of info. I don't know what this is. This is random Twitter stuff, but let's pull this up here. So apparently, I mean, one of the big things, there were three that kind of grokked in. Grok had mentioned like three big instances of fraud. One of them was pretty crazy. I think I have the story pulled up here. So the first one, it's actually a big case. It's called, I guess, there was a charity called Feeding Our Future, right? And this was back during COVID. So I guess during the COVID era, they established this like fund for people to be able to distribute meals to children in the Minnesota area. And I guess what happened is a bunch of Somali immigrants signed up to receive the funds and pretended to be distributing these free meals. So one of the guys, like I guess the most notorious guy, his name's Abdimajid, I think I'm getting that right, Mohammed Nur. I think he stole something like $49 million or something like that. It was actually a really complex scheme where he was like claiming to have all these different food distribution sites that turned out to just be vacant warehouses or parking lots or places where schools were already distributing the food. Okay, and then he set up shell companies that were like in his name, but an LLC to be able to receive the funds and then pay it back to him or family members and stuff like that, right? So he and his co-defendants, it says, stole more than $47 million. Isn't that insane? Like, I can't even process stealing $1 million and like how you would even pull that off or like get away with it. This guy's crazy though. I'll show you a picture of him here. Oh, I hope I have him. Yeah, this guy, this flashy motherfucker. Look at him. This is him, I think, going into court somewhere. Maybe not, but he's always in like the suit and stuff. So the story gets crazier. I guess they went to court at the like in the middle of the trial for all this stuff. He bribed he attempted to bribe one of the jurors. Okay. So like it goes over all the stuff he spent it on. It's like he spent his fraud on a 2021 Dodge Ram pickup truck for 64 grand. 6 weeks later, he purchased a 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe for 35 grand. Nur used fraud proceeds to take a honeymoon to the Maldives, where he stayed in a private villa. He also spent 30,000 in fraud proceeds to purchase jewelry in Dubai. Sounds like he had some little chick on the side. He was trying to impress, right, with that sweet fraud money. But this was the best part of it too. Before the bribing the juror thing, he used some of his fraud money to purchase a fake college degree. So it was a real college degree, but what he did is he signed up for some type of online course, and then he went through this company. It's called something like Do Your Courses For You or something like that. Like that's what the company's called. And he paid him like 5 grand or 6 grand a couple different times to literally take all of his tests so that he could get a degree. So he really put this fraud money to work. Okay. He was investing into himself, right? He was looking to go clean, come out with a degree out of this all. He's a young guy too. I think he's only like 23 or something. Stole a ton of money from this COVID fund. All right. They caught him. They found out all the kids on the rolls were fake. All the locations were fake. Brought him to trial along with, I think it's at the latest count, something like 59 or 70 Somalis in the Minnesota area. And I don't know that it's all for this one case. There were a couple listed, but this is one of the bigger ones. So when you hear in the news, like, oh, there's this Somali fraud, like, it's an actual crazy, crazy amount of fraud that they were conducting. But then in the middle of the trial, I guess, he tried to bribe one of the defendants. It says that they picked out the one juror, tried to bribe one of the jurors, sorry. They picked out the one juror of color who was an Asian woman, which is, I guess they like left $120,000 on her doorstep. And she, of course, immediately called the police. See, that's where they fucked up, is they mistook an Asian woman for a person of color. Can't make that mistake. If that was a black chick, he'd be free right now. He'd be walking free. But she narked him, so he's getting tried both for the fraud charges, which I believe he's already been convicted of, or will be soon, and then he's got a separate case for bribing the juror, which is, I imagine that's fraud money that he's using to try to bribe the juror. That's just insane to me. So that was one of 3 prominent cases mentioned. So when you're hearing all this stuff in the news, that's what they're talking about. I think the other sources I had were just that same sort of stuff. Yeah, but he's living the life. He's dressed to the nines. Let's see. I think everyone's seen the clip already of Trump talking about Somalians bitching and complaining, garbage, need to go back where they come from. I'll close on that. I have a little monologue I'll play for everyone. A couple other things on it right now. Or should we shift? Oh, this was a tweet. So Ilhan Omar, I feel a little bad for her right now, actually. She's taking a lot of flack for this, because she's kind of the face of Somalia in Minnesota, right? And all of her people, frankly, are in a little bit of trouble. So she's on the news networks defending it and stuff. I think I have a clip of her here. This was a funny clip. She was on, I think, Jake Tapper's show. And he was asking her what happened with this COVID fraud. And she blames the system. Here, watch.
People have been investigated in these schemes so far. Americans at large stole tens of billions of forms of aid during the pandemic all over the country. Minnesota's fraud scandal stands out, according to federal auditors. What are you hearing from investigators right now?
Well, I've been following the cases closely as they've gone through the courts, and we know that there are more indictments possibly coming. I think that number might go up to 73 is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Can you shed any light on
73.
why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these
What had happened was
kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Now, obviously, whatever.
it wasn't the people committing fraud, it was the guardrails that were at fault. There really weren't proper guardrails. Isn't this the same person that wants to like get rid of the police and defund the police and all this stuff? Wouldn't that be also considered a guardrail? Now she wants the guardrails. She just looks super uncomfortable. I do feel a little bit bad for her. But then Jake Tapper comes in here and downplays it. Watch this. Let's see if you can hear it where he downplays it here.
The ethnic group, the actions of a few dozen should not impugn an entire community of thousands of people.
Now, I do agree with him that, yes, it's not going to be all Somalians. And the same as with anything else. It's like, of course, you know, when you're making a generalization or there's a problem with a culture or something like that, it can be directionally true, but not apply to everyone. So that's true. And there probably are a good amount of, you know, innocent, hardworking Somalis who have nothing to do with this. That's fine. But you shouldn't downplay it because it is a big problem. And I'll get into the stats later in the monologue, but when you look at like the percentage of Somalian families, Somalian immigrant families that are on welfare in the United States, it's somewhere around 40 to 42%, I believe, which is insane. Like if you think about that, half of the people who immigrate here from Somalia, almost half are on food stamp benefits. There's something wrong with that, right? Jake Tapper here, he downplays it by saying a few dozen, all right? The number is, as Ilhan Omar just quoted, in the 70s, all right? That would be at least 7 dozen, correct? So a few dozen is not 7 dozen, it's not 70 some odd people, right? So I didn't appreciate that, but that's kind of how the leftist news operates sometimes. Here's Trump talking more shit about Somalia. He just calls them a country of people. He says they're not even a country. They're just a bunch of people killing each other, which is kind of funny.
The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, is saying that he's actually proud to have the largest Somali community in the country, and his police chief.
Well, then he's a fool.
Well, his police chief is also
I
saying
wouldn't be
that
proud to have the largest Somalian. Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. Look, these Somalians have taken billions of dollars out of our country.
The mayor of
The brutal description of Somalia from Trump. Just a bunch of people walking around killing each other. Fair enough. We'll kind of move on from this for a second. The other big story is the double tap thing with, you know, there was Trump's been blowing up these Venezuelan drug boats. Democrats have been trying their best to frame him as some sort of a war criminal for this. Even though I would argue if somebody is carrying fentanyl or is likely to be carrying something like that or contributing to that problem, they're bringing it across the ocean towards the United States, that is effectively a weapon of mass destruction. It's like they're trafficking poison directly into the country. So I would consider that an enemy combatant easily. Narco-terrorist applies in that case, right? And anything you can do to dissuade that, e.g., blowing up boats in the middle of the ocean, that would be helpful for stopping this very, very deadly problem. I think like 300,000 Americans have been killed by it. So this is not a small problem, and you do have to do something about it. But the Democrats have been trying to frame him as a war criminal for blowing up these boats. Now they've kind of sunk on one thing. I guess there's a news story that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, ordered a double strike. They're calling it a double tap on one of these boats. In other words, they hit it with a missile. It didn't completely destroy the boat. They knew there were survivors on there. And then they shot a second missile at it, killed the survivors. So they're saying that's an obvious war crime. Couple thoughts here. I mean, number one, I've seen for the past like 2 years videos from Ukraine. They put this shit online all the time of like these drones coming down and like zeroing in on Russians who appear to be giving up and surrendering on the battlefield. And then the drone gets close to their head and explodes, presumably, right? I don't hear anything from Democrats about the war crimes committed by Ukraine against these surrendering Russians. You know, it doesn't seem to be a popular story in leftist circles. I don't think it's comparable to what's happening here, but it's just something interesting to point out. You really don't hear too much about that if it's some cause they consider friendly. The other thing is, I don't think we don't have any obligation to pull these people out of the ocean. Let's say there's a narco-terrorist coming across the ocean with a boatload of poison towards the U.S. and we blow up the boat. Whether or not they survive, we have no obligation to then go into the ocean and save them, right? There's no obligation. The Democrats are, and I've said this before, the party of HR. You know, they always believe that there's some unseen HR force hovering above everything, and if something's against the rules, they should really appeal to this authority that can intervene and tell you the proper rules. This is effectively a war, you know, in my eyes, and there are no rules. Aside from that, and not having to save them, I just don't think that's how war works, realistically, that you only get one shot, and if it doesn't kill them, you can't take another shot because now they're a survivor, and that's not really how it works. There were some other people talking about this online too. Dan Crenshaw had a good little clip on it.
I can't recall any time in my history doing counterterrorism operations where we strike a group, whether that's a building or a boat or a vehicle, and then we were like, oh, well, they're survivors, so we have to go, we can't kill them. Of course we kill them.
So blunt. And to be fair, he didn't see the first time whether they died or not. He had to turn his head a little bit. So you could easily mistake that, but it's just not how the real world works. We're trying to kill people. If you miss them or you only blow off their, you kill them. This is just war. It's only a war crime if you're the Democrats and you're considering these innocent civilians, you know, that fall under some Geneva Convention where you're like trying to get Trump for it. I think it's a stretch. And I don't think that most of the public agrees with that either. Then you have Cernovich coming in. He points out the absurdity of the double tap here. Dropping one bomb is allowed, but you can't double tap. Shows the absurdity of the so-called law of war. Yeah. It's absolutely stupid. And so I want to kind of compare it to like gun laws in the country sometimes in some of the stricter states where it's like, you know, you're allowed to like shoot somebody in self-defense, but the second, you know, it crosses a line into, you know, more than is necessary, you can be sued for murder and everything. It's like in a lot of those cases, you know, it's split this second decision. There's life or death involved, and people don't really know what they're doing. They're just trying to eliminate the threat. So, you know, there's also reporting that came in recently that the reason they shot a second missile at it was because the fisherman who fell off the boat got back on the boat after the first shot and tried to start saving the drugs. You watch here.
New information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the two survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice. So again, David, that video will be key, and Admiral Bradley will be on the Hill tomorrow behind closed doors.
It's interesting. I don't know if you can't really believe anything you hear from the right or the left regarding the incident, at first glance. That's probably what they're going to say, whether it's true or not. I don't think that anything's going to come of it. I think that at the end of the day, they're going to say what they need to say to make sure that, it seems like it was something they had to do. It's the decision that was made. We're going to kill narco terrorists. So everyone just needs to get behind it. There was an interesting, I guess, related to war. Palmer Luckey, he's the founder of Anduril. This is an interesting story you guys might not have heard of, but it's a weapons company. So they do a lot of like drone stuff, like new age weapons, like a tech nerd. What did he do? Spotify or something like that? And now he's in weapons of war, right? So he's making drones and anti-drone defenses and stuff. And he says in this clip, they're asking him about the future of space war, right? And is it important? Is that the future battleground? And he argues that that's not the future battleground, and that the future battleground is fighting in the Earth's crust. Watch this terrifying clip.
That space will become the defining domain for 21st century national defense.
I actually believe that the subterranean domain will be the defining war space, but nobody agrees with me, and every time I talk about it, I sound insane to people. But I'll tell you this, there's a lot more crust than there is air or sea or surface of land. And so vehicles that can maneuver through the crust of the earth the same way that submarines move through the water are going to be a huge deal. I think they're going to define at least the second half of this century. The benefits you get from submarines, both in terms of signature, but also inability. Someone can know exactly where a sub is. It doesn't mean they can get to it and stop it. All of those benefits are massively compounded when you are in the crust of the earth. It's quite easy to drop a depth charge on somebody or to have a torpedo go down and get something. Very, very hard to go get something that is 5 miles under the surface of the earth. You can know it's there and there's nothing you can do about it. I've been saying this for years, and every time I say it, people think it's some kind of crazy nutty thing, but I have built working prototypes of this. I truly believe in it. There's more crust than air. There's more crust than ocean. There's more crust than land. It would be crazy if we were not using it to do everything that we do in every other domain. So
he's built working prototypes of a machine worm. That sounds absolutely terrifying. He's probably right. The more I think about it, like a ground submarine almost, because it'd be way worse to deal with than like an actual submarine. He's saying, you literally couldn't imagine being like a country at war with the U.S., right? Just in this hypothetical, and the U.S. has one of these things. Imagine sitting there, and maybe you're even across the ocean, right? And that that there's this like 5-ton machine, 3 miles underneath your city, or there are machines burrowing under your country somewhere coming towards your capital, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. Just wait for them to pop up and explode. Like, that sounds fucking terrifying. But, and what's interesting, I always picture a future in which we don't have war for some reason. I thought we were supposed to, ChatGPT was going to save us all at some point, right? Aren't we supposed to get AI and then we just all have food stamps forever and everything's all good? And we're just eating and having sex and stuff? With the robots, of course. No, he's talking about now Palmer Luckey's telling me there's going to be a fucking robot worm crawling up under my city trying to destroy me. That sounds like a horrible future. He's literally predicting that. He's a smart guy, so that's kind of scary. What else we got here? Marco Rubio talking about the spread of Islam. This is a big big thing. We talk about immigration a lot. One of the biggest concerns is the spread of Muslims into different countries. And he kind of touches on the fact that there's something different about, maybe you might call it radical Islam, but I think it's kind of fundamental Islam, the idea that their faith is meant to replace other faiths, and that ultimately over time they want to replace all faiths and be the one defining faith. So here's Marco Rubio talking about it.
All radical Islamic movements in the world identify the West writ large, but the United States in particular, as the greatest evil on the earth. And every chance to have the notion that somehow radical Islam would be comfortable with simply controlling some province in Iraq or Syria is just not borne out by history. Radical Islam has shown that their desire is not simply to occupy one part of the world and be happy with their own little caliphate. They want to expand. It's revolutionary in its nature. It seeks to expand and control more territories and more people. And radical Islam has designs openly on the West. On the United States, on Europe, we've seen that progress there as well. And they are prepared to conduct acts of terrorism. In the case of Iran, nation-state actions, assassinations, murders, you name it, whatever it takes for them to gain their influence and ultimately their domination of different cultures and societies. And
it's kind of scary. They remind me of, not to be too nerdy of a reference here, but like the Borg on Star Trek. Like, wasn't that their whole thing, is they were like this alien civilization that they wanted to take over and completely like assimilate you into the Borg, right? There's a guy on not on Twitter, he's like kind of a famous guy, I forget his name though, Nassim Taleb, I want to say, who's written a bunch of books. I think Black Swan was one of them, and he had an interesting thing just talking about, this was years ago, in one of those books where he talks about how intolerant societies are more likely to succeed and thrive when amongst tolerant societies. And I'm sort of misquoting, I don't remember the exact analogy he uses, but it's sort of, if you have a Muslim population within a city, and say they're a very small minority, but they're very halal, right? Like they will only eat certain products, right? And the rest of the population does not, they can eat halal or eat regular food. Over time, gradually, all products will become halal, because you have a small subset that is very adamant about it and won't budge and is intolerant. So monetary forces over time from these companies, everything will move towards halal. And it's sort of the same thing here. You know, they come to countries, they're very intolerant, and they want to sort of enforce their way upon things. And unless the, we'll say, native population is as intolerant back with what they want, you lose the fight over time. So I don't mean a physical fight, I just mean like the dominant culture war, basically. But yeah, so that's why Muslim immigration in particular has a different risk to it than other forms of immigration, because there is that tipping point at which things veer into a completely radically different culture that you can no longer control, right? And you're sort of seeing a little bit of that in New York, not completely, obviously, but a little bit of it. And certainly in Europe, they have a big problem with it right now. We'll finish up here in a second with the closing monologue. Yeah, let's just kind of go into that. This is big story of the night, the week really, was Trump calling Somalians garbage. You got the left coming out saying that it's racist. You know, obviously that's kind of their favorite thing to do. I don't think so, and here's why. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Misinformation, where we cut through the noise and deliver the facts the mainstream media conveniently forgets. And tonight we've been diving into President Trump's controversial comments on Somali immigrants, remarks that have sparked fierce debate across the political spectrum.
We could go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. You know, they came from paradise, and they said, this isn't paradise. But when they come from hell, and they complain and do nothing but bitch, we don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much.
You know the drill, the left is screaming racism because Trump dared to call out what everyone with eyes can see. That too many of these folks come here, soak up welfare like a sponge, and then turn around and trash the very country that gave them a lifeline. He called them garbage? Well, let's unpack that, shall we? First off, are these comments racist? Here's the thing. If you're running everything through the racism filter, that automatic lens where any criticism of a group with dark skin gets slapped with the scarlet R, then sure, it fits. But what if we try a different filter? The culture filter, let's call it. Through that one, Trump's not lumping all black people into some big bucket. He's laser focused on one specific import. People from Somalia, a country that's been a textbook failure factory for generations. War, famine, chaos, you name it. He's not attacking a race, he's attacking a culture that's proven it can't build or sustain anything worth exporting. It's like picking apples and ditching the bruised ones from the same rotten branch. Not because they're red, but because those particular red apples all come from the same sick strain. Call it culturalism if you want, but it's definitely not racism. Skin color? Irrelevant. Success potential? That's the filter that matters. These refugees get plopped down in places like Minnesota, handed generous welfare packages under the guise of compassion, and what do we get in return? Massive fraud schemes that rob children of their meals. Massive fraud schemes like Feeding Our Future aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a deeper systemic issue in the Somali community in Minnesota. According to the latest American Community Survey data from 2019 to 2023, Minnesota's Somali population of about 80,000 faces stark economic challenges. Here's a snapshot of the numbers. 36.4% of Somalis live below the federal poverty line, higher than the state average of around 9%, with rates spiking to 42.6% for those under 18 and a whopping 57.6% for seniors over 65. That's over 28,000 people scraping by on next to nothing. Household income. The median household income sits at just $43,600, with 40.1% of Somali households earning less than $35,000 annually, far below Minnesota's statewide median of about $84,000. Roughly 42% of Somali households in Minnesota rely on SNAP food stamps, a figure drawn from the national census breakdowns applied to the local community, compared to about 8% of all Minnesota households. Broader public benefits usage hovers around 42.4% for Somali recipients nationwide, underscoring heavy dependence on programs like these. Only 70.4% of working-age Somalis are employed, leaving nearly 30% sidelined, either unemployed or out of the labor force altogether. Older reports peg the not in the workforce rate at 40%, but even the updated figures show a community struggling to break into stable jobs, with 40.6% lacking a high school diploma. These aren't just abstract figures. They're the backdrop to why scandals like the $250 million Feeding Our Future heist, where dozens of Somali Minnesotans were charged with siphoning funds meant for kids' meals, hit so hard. Immigrants don't take the jobs Americans don't want to do. They take the welfare Americans can't afford to give. When welfare rolls are this bloated and oversight this lax, it's a recipe for abuse. It's time to ask, is endless importation without assimilation the answer, or do we need real reforms to ensure newcomers contribute rather than drain? Take the Feeding Our Future scandal, for example. Over 70 defendants charged so far, many from the Somali community, stealing hundreds of millions from a COVID-era program meant to feed hungry kids. They set up fake feeding sites, pocketed the cash, and left actual children high and dry. That's not contributing, that's leeching. And Trump's right. They don't just take, they complain. Look at Ilhan Omar, the poster child for this entitlement. She flees a shithole country, lands in America, gets elected to Congress on the backs of imported Somali voters in her district, and what does she do? immediately bites the hand that feeds her. She's called the U.S. one of the worst countries in the world, this coming from Somalia, railed against our system as corrupt and racist, and stirred up endless controversies from anti-Semitic tropes to questioning American values. If that's gratitude, I'd hate to see what she looks like when she's ungrateful. And before you cry racism, consider this. If Trump said the same thing about the French, calling them garbage for whatever reason, would that make him racist against white people? Actually, these days with France's demographics, it might be seen as anti-Muslim. Because that's what happens when you let unchecked immigration into your country. The point is, it's not about race, it's about behavior. Even people in the black community are saying it. There's this one guy on TikTok, a black handyman. He's blowing the whistle on Somalians on welfare.
I'm from Minneapolis, and Somalians are just part of the culture here. As far back as I can remember, I've always seen Somalians. And in these past 5 years, the population increased so much. It went from seeing them to them feeling like the majority a lot of places that I go. And also, over the past few years, I've noticed that I see a lot of them with new cars. So I'm a handyman, and I worked on a lot of Section 8 housing to make sure they're up to standard. And one thing I've noticed when I go to these Section 8 houses, one, it's usually a Somali family. What I mean, usually it's 9 times out of 10. And those houses usually have new cars in the front. I mean, cars with an S, multiple new cars. And what I mean usually is like 8 out of 10 Somali houses, I've seen that. And I always wondered how someone on Section 8 can afford multiple new cars. I just couldn't put it together. So now finding out about this fraud stuff makes so much sense. And you know who I feel bad for other than me for paying for that shit with my taxes? Is Somalians who came here on the up and up and who didn't break the law. Because as a black man, I know how it feels to be judged because someone else with your same skin color did some stupid shit that you wouldn't approve of. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, but one thing I do know is I've been saying for years we need to kick Tim Walsh out because he knew about this shit from the beginning.
Guy's not Somali, just a hardworking Minnesotan fixing up Section 8 homes. He says 9 out of 10 residents he deals with are Somali, all on welfare, driving brand new cars while the rest of us grind to pay the bills. Is he racist? Of course not. He's just stating the obvious. We don't want people from crappy countries coming here to exploit the system, form gangs, act entitled, and never assimilate. America's immigration policy shouldn't be a free-for-all charity case. If your culture wrecked your homeland, fix it there. Don't import the mess here. Be more selective. Bring in those who come because they see the opportunity to work hard for the American dream, not those who eye it as a chance to milk a lax welfare system. That's garbage. Let in the people who will contribute, blend in, and actually appreciate the greatest country on earth. Otherwise, send them back. That's not hate, that's protecting what we've built. So is this leftist manufactured outrage? You decide. But the facts speak for themselves. Thanks for tuning into Misinformation. Remember, the truth does not care about your feelings or the media's spin. Good night. Yeah, seriously, good night. Fucking tired.